always say to people, you just want to get out there and sell something, and the money is actually irrelevant. You just want to get out there and practice the art of selling your product or service in whatever way, shape or form that takes. If you have certain expectations that you place on yourself around kind of what success looks like to you, and failure doesn't form part of that expectation, well, it's always going to feel like a bit of a shock when people start to sort of reject you. Businesses actually, it doesn't feel like it, but businesses are incredibly predictable. I've learned this the hard way, and I've got the t-shirt, and it means I'm able to kind of share what I'm about to share. There's 4 basic, simple stages, like a life cycle that businesses go through on repeat.
Many of you watching this video right now might have the same thought. You want to start a business. So this interview today is with Waite. Robin is a professional business coach, he's a public speaker, and he's a best-selling author.
When you say business coach, and I know funny story, I've hired 2 business coaches this year. One from, when both was from Upwork, one was really good. And I found myself, as I'm going through this journey of trying to create a business, one of the things that stop a lot of people from creating a business is the mentality and mindset, psychology aspect. Right? So a lot of people that listen to this podcast, we're trying to get them, as I mentioned, we're trying to get them from 0 to 1. So let's do the scenario game, right? The persona that I'm speaking to, there's a gentleman that I know, his name is Chris, about 38 years old. He started several businesses. The issue with that is he started several businesses. He started an AI automation agency. He started a YouTube channel. With the AI automation agency, he got it to, I think, 1 customer, but never created any revenue. All his businesses never created any revenue. So as a business coach, how would you help this individual start to generate revenue? You can just kind of walk us through that part.
Yeah, a lot of business coaches sort of will tell you to focus on your goals and things like that. And I have a bit of a problem with goal setting in general. Actually, it's not particularly helpful because goals tend to be very binary. You either hit them or you don't. And when you don't, people tend to kind of beat themselves up over it. That startup sort of process, I think people, you can go down the route of, right, yeah, let's get to $100,000 and we're going to charge $5,000 a product. But sometimes, that can be too lofty a goal for a lot of people who are just starting out. So if you're starting from like grassroots, like ground zero with, literally like no clients, no, very few little resources in terms of money and time and things like that. I always say to people, you just want to get out there and sell something, and the money is actually irrelevant. You just want to get out there and practice the art of selling your product or service in whatever way, shape or form that takes. Imagine somebody who just wants to set up a car washing business. Now you could get the pressure washer, you could get the chamois, the sponge, the buckets, all of the cleaning, shampoos and things like that, the waxes for the car. Or you could just go around to a nice neighborhood where there's maybe 100 homes and they've got 2 cars parked on every drive, and you can see their kind of middle class, decent, nice enough cars. Knock on the doors and just say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about starting up a car washing business. You'd be really helping me if I could just wash your car. And they might say, well, how much do you charge for this? And I'd just probably go back to them and say, well, what would it be worth to you? What would you be, if I could wash both cars, how much would you be willing to spend on it? And some people might say $10, some people might say $50, but it's all good feedback. And you should kind of not be so proud that you wouldn't wash a car for $10, because it's just about research at this particular point in time. And they might then look at you and go, well, where's your bucket and sponge? How are you going to wash a car? Well, the thing is, it's likely that if you're in a nice neighborhood and they've got 2 cars, they've probably got a bucket and sponge in the garage anyway. So again, if you're not too proud, you could say to them, well, listen, I'm just starting up, it'd be really helpful to me. Could I borrow your bucket and sponge? And I think a lot of people are just, one, they're too proud to, earn $10. They're also too proud to ask to borrow some kit just to get started. And the thing is, you'll just, through that process of selling that first product or service at whatever money you can get for it, you can learn like 90% of everything you need to know about your business and what you're prepared to do for it. Beyond that, once you've kind of achieved that, you can then start to sort of optimize it and make your marketing better and make your sales approach better. Look at your pricing, look at your products and services, and start to package them up and things like that. But I think just in those very early stages, just get out there and sell something. That's probably the simple message.
Right. So get out there and sell, but oftentimes this is where a lot of people try to get out there and sell. And I've experienced this myself, is to try to get out there and then self-doubt comes in. The impostor syndrome comes in. I'm not an entrepreneur and all that. So how do you deal with that aspect?
Well, again, that's probably about expectations, right? So if you have certain expectations that you place on yourself around kind of what success looks like to you, and failure doesn't form part of that expectation, well, it's always going to feel like a bit of a shock when people start to sort of reject you, when they say no to you. So most people's greatest fear is actually that fear of rejection, or just maybe looking a bit stupid, maybe a bit dumb, just like getting things a bit wrong, or I don't know, just knocking on somebody's door and them actually saying no to you. We have this concept of like somehow that sales is very sort of pushy and aggressive and that sort of thing. And if you're selling something that you have to convert, and I'm not quite sure where that sort of mindset comes from, but actually when you start to look at the statistics of most successful businesses, even like Apple, take a big brand like Apple, for example, they know that they're going to get millions of people coming to the Apple website every day, but that only a certain percentage of people are actually going to go ahead and buy an Apple, or an iPhone, or a Mac, or whatever product it is that they're looking at. So part of the process of starting out in business is accepting that failure is inherent in any business. And what I mean by that is that, let's say, for example, well, if we give me an example of a business, the avatar, which you kind of mentioned. What sort of service would that person be selling?
AI consulting.
Okay, so AI consulting. So you could assume, one assumption would be, right, every business owner that we go and speak to will benefit in some way, shape, or form from having AI in their business, right?
Mm-hmm,
which
right.
is a fair and reasonable assumption. However, in that particular, let's say with AI consulting, not every business will be able to afford it. Not every business will actually get the optimal result through having AI in their business, the services which you're supplying. From that point, you can then start to figure out, well, a good conversion rate, for example, for a consulting business is actually about 1 in 5 to 1 in 3. So it's quite low. So 1 in 5, like 20% conversion rate, it means that probably, 80% of the people that you speak to don't need your product, or maybe can't afford it, or can't see the benefit in it. Or it's just not a good fit. You might just not be two people that are going to get along, right? So actually there's this massive inherent amount of failure. 80% of people are going to say no to you. So I think when you know that as an entrepreneur, just sort of starting out in business, you can then you can go into it with your eyes wide open, knowing that the answer is actually to go out and get as many no's as you possibly can do, because every no gets you that closer to that first yes.
Understanding your batting average, how many people you have to talk to actually get that yes and move it closer to a seller.
The other thing is that you want to look at is I call it goal-focused pricing. So this is like a good way to start to assess like how much you could be charging versus how many clients, like what's your capacity to work with clients. So let's focus on the AI consulting side of things, right? So hypothetically, imagine over the next 12 months, how much revenue would you like to drive into the business?
Next 12 months, let's say it's 100K reasonable, even number?
Yeah, 100K. So $100,000. Okay. And what sort of price point were you thinking of charging for the services?
Maybe 2,000 to set up and do some sort of retainer, maybe 1,500 a month, 600 a month, like 6,000 a month or a year, something like that.
6,000 a year. Okay. So, and would every client sign up to the retainer, do you think?
No, for sure. They might just need a one-time setup for AI.
Okay, so how many roughly do you think would sign up?
Roughly for the retainer, or just like the one time?
Just for the retainer.
Just for the retainer, let's just say 10.
Okay, so 10 clients on a retainer at say $500-$600 a month, or 6K a year. So that's 60K on those retainers, assuming that they all sign up in month one. How many $2,000 setups could you do on a monthly basis?
Those are high. I probably could do
20 a month. Okay, so there's two levers here which we're looking to pull. So the first one is about, obviously we're looking at supply and demand basically. So the first lever is based around how much supply we've got available to us. So it sounds like you've got loads of supply, for example, for that service. You could do lots of setups and then you could flip those clients into that monthly. In terms of your capacity, you'll be able to deliver 100K's worth of new business. Okay. But the second lever which we're pulling as well is the ability to be able to stimulate enough demand to satisfy that supply, right? So how many clients do you think a startup business would be able to sort of, how many people do you think they'd be able to attract into their world from a marketing perspective sort of from a standing start?
Say we got a batting average of if we call every 80% is going to say no. So you're going to get 2 out of 10, so 20 out of 100 people, depending on if you're making about 100 calls a day. Roughly just get about a week with that 100 calls, Monday through Friday, 500. That's about 100 individuals, so 100 clients you would have over the course of a week. So you're looking at 100 clients, course of a week, for the course of a month. Theoretically, you have about 500 individuals, at least that you're talking to, that might have some interest. You would have to convert them, but you would have about 500 people that you're talking to, if those numbers were split.
Yeah, that's the thing. And the trouble is, though, that if you've got a really high volume of like marketing activity going on there, but the moment then you start to enroll clients, who's going to be making those calls?
Right, it'll drop. Right.
Because now you're busy in fulfillment, right? So now we've got a third lever. So we've got how much demand we can actually put out. We've got how many clients we can actually attract into our business. But then also we've got the next next lever here, which is around client fulfillment. Because obviously, as a business startup, you're putting on the different hats for the different roles and responsibility in your business. So you've got to allow time for marketing, allow time for sales. You've got to allow time for client fulfillment, plus doing admin and finance and all of the rest of it as well that supports it. And I'll be very honest. I mean, I've worked with a lot of consultants over my sort of 8 years coaching, and from a standing start, most consultants, they struggle to get their first client within the first 3 months, just one client, because they're still looking for that product market fit. They know kind of who they want to serve. They know the product which they can deliver, but actually in practice, going out there and finding that first client, they find very difficult because there's a lot of sort of trial and error which goes into that in the first instance. Going to networking meetings, or maybe speaking, like a bit of cold calling, like you said, or a bit of networking on sort of media and things. So they're trying to find their way through it. So there's going to be this lag between starting to do stuff and actually getting that first client over the line, and then obviously getting paid for it, which naturally, again, starts to reduce down the earnings potential over that first year. And I think this is where a lot of people, especially starting out, they kind of start their business off for the wrong reasons. If you're starting the business out just to make some money, you're not going to be where you go through that sort of tough patch to get it started. And then businesses go through those natural sort of life cycles, right? So eventually you'll hit other dips. What I've noticed is that the business owners that do it just for the money, they don't last particularly long, because the moment the money dries up, if there's no passion in that business, they're just going to give up. They're going to stop doing it. So it's really important for those businesses that are going, especially from 0 to 1, that you've picked something that you're deeply passionate about, so that during the times when it is hard to kind of enroll clients, you've got enough passion within that, to get you through those tough times.
Yeah, I was literally just watching a podcast recently, and it talks about passion, and I hear a lot about passion from a lot of different individuals. I've thought about that, like passion over. So passion, and you said passion is an important ingredient. I've known some people that go out and make some income, and I guess it's different to just go out and make some income versus having a long-lasting business. The passion has to be there. Someone could go out and make income with having no passion, but to have something that's sustainable, you have to have passion.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, like, I love coaching, right? But I probably only spend maybe, well, I suppose if you include speaking and podcast interviews and things like that, it's probably slightly more. But my core coaching hours, I maybe coach 6 to 8 hours a week max, right? And obviously that's my revenue generating activities. Actually, a lot of the time I'm probably doing more sort of marketing related stuff, or managing my team, or doing the other parts of my business. And I want to do coaching. I don't want to be spending my time necessarily doing all those other parts of the business, but you have to do that when you're a small sort of 1 or 2 person business, right? It's just part and parcel of it. So that's why you have to be deep. I kind of suffer those other functions a little bit to get through to doing the bit which I'm most passionate about. I think if I was doing coaching just for the money as well, I probably would have stopped a long time ago. So I think having passion in the thing which you're doing is hugely, hugely important. The other thing as well is the ability to be able to deliver results to your clients. Again, there's a lot of people who kind of choose careers because they, again, maybe for the money or because they can kind of do it, but they don't do it because they're amazing at it. So I think passion is important. I think the ability to be able to create remarkable results for your customers is like super important, because obviously it's not what you do, it's the results of what you do that people are buying. The kind of the finance almost comes third in line to that. And there's other benefits as well, which, you know, I think you listened to the Ali Abdaal interview, which we talk about, you know, fulfillment from that job, that comes from a combination of the passion and the purpose and the mission, and also freedom. Me, for example, I'm very fortunate that I have a career now where, I mean, my core coaching hours plus the other bits of the business kind of wrap around family life. So I can be available to do school drop-offs and things like that, go to recitals in the evenings and stuff, you know, and be around during school holidays, which is looming. We have a 6-week sort of holiday here now in the UK over the summer, sort of starting from Friday. So I can be around the house to be a part of that. So there's other benefits of like running your own business. So I think somebody starting out needs to kind of look at their life holistically, and it's not about work-life balance. It's just about trying to build something that gives you balance overall, that allows you to fulfill, you know, whatever objectives it is you've set for your life.
Someone starting out, I've heard this one too, kind of demystify all this stuff that I'm putting this in. How much, if someone's working a job, you know, they're working a 9 to 5, how many hours per day do they need to put in to build day 6 to 7 daily?
Well, that's a tricky one, because if they're kind of shifting from full-time employment into starting up their own business, and the transition that, you know, it depends on how quickly they want to create that transition, I would say. If they want that to be a quick transition and they've got maybe like 1, 2 or 3 months to do it, obviously like the more time they put into it, the better, faster results they're going to get. You know, you're talking probably, are we talking here in hours?
Yeah, you said hours, right? How many hours a day?
Yeah, so you're probably talking like 2, 3, 4 hours a day. The challenges happen, right? If you've got a family, for example, kids, that takes up a huge amount of time. So you're immediately going to be limited. But interestingly, so a mentor or associate coach on several other programs, and one of them is actually for ex and serving police officers who want to start up their own business. So many of them are still serving in the police force here in the UK, especially. And what they do is, because of their shift patterns, so they typically tend to do like 4 days on, 4 days off. They have what we call success days. So rather than having like their days off, they actually put 2 or 3 out of the 4 down days into their business solidly. And you know, they've set up all sorts of different businesses, from like dog training academies to lawn care businesses to car detailing businesses. And so I think if somebody's serious about starting up their own business, they shouldn't be afraid. You know, if you don't have kids, you've got an unfair advantage immediately. But giving up a Saturday and or a Sunday whilst you're trying to get started up, just to get things rolling. But again, a lot of people put effort into the wrong things with the time which they're doing. So they'll spend their time, and what I'm about to say, I'll caveat it, because obviously long term you do need the things that I'm about to say eventually, but not right from the word go. So things like getting your branding sorted out, or getting a website set up, or posting loads of times on social, eventually you need those, but not immediately. You know, so like that AI business, for example, that AI consultant, they need to be really clear on who it is that they want to serve. So if, let's say, for example, they're going to work with coaches, and they need to figure out very quickly how they can get into the world of the coaches in their network and start those conversations off, which probably doesn't involve social media marketing or a website or branding. It's just about being able to start those conversations. The other thing as well is, if you don't charge enough for the service which you're doing, so you talked about doing like a $2,000 setup fee, and, you know, then some kind of rolling ongoing sort of maintenance for that. I see a lot of consultants when they start out, their prices are just way too low. So they actually need too many clients to actually get freedom from their job. So if they're making like $10,000 a month from their job currently, and they feel they need to match that, well, immediately, like at 2K setup, you need 5 clients a month, like coming through, just to hit that 10K mark. And yes, eventually you'll get the care plans as well on top of that. That's a lot of effort. That's like, so 5 clients a month would be probably doing, I don't know, 15 to 20 consultations each month just to get to enroll those clients. Plus then you've got the client fulfillment, which, delivering work to 5 clients on a regular basis, that's going to eat into your free time very quickly. So I would suggest, actually, you might be better off thinking about a setup fee, which is more like maybe $1,000. So then you only need maybe one client a month enrolling to get close to your income you're getting from your salary. So it closes the gap so much faster. And it might be rather than finding small businesses that can only afford $2,000 and plus $500 a month, actually put a majority of your time into finding that one bigger client who then will pay $5K or $8K up front, plus then maybe $1,500 or $2,000 a month.
Right. So you said if you don't have kids, you already have an unfair advantage. Let's flip the script. What if you do? I know a lot of stay-at-home moms that make amazing entrepreneurs. And they created their business after they had, kids. So what are you looking at now? Does it just become a situation where you definitely have to be, with a baby? You can't, baby's the baby, they're going to cry when they're going to cry. But you have to be more strategic with your time and what you're putting your effort into when you have time, I would think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if they're literally doing it with the kids in the background, I mean, that's going to be tricky. But kids nap, and mums know the routine of their babies, right? So they'll get used to kind of doubling down on those efforts. When probably aside from resting, because it's exhausting, like being a parent. Probably even more so for mums out there. I don't know where they get their energy from or how they sustain it. Sometimes I think there's then that thing around sort of working smarter, not harder in those sorts of circumstances, and leveraging where best you can. So you might, let's say, for example, there is a stay-at-home mum. Maybe she's really good at marketing and sales, but the client fulfillment there, I mean, let's say she gets the AI game, and so that's her business. But the client fulfillment actually is a thing which takes the time. She might focus on being really great at marketing and selling, but then find other partners to then do the actual client fulfillment. So that it'll reduce down the earnings from it, but at least there's better leverage there of her time. You can work out something called an effective hourly rate. So take me, for example, with how much I charge for my coaching and the number of consultations which I deliver. I've worked out that for every consultation with a prospective client, it's worth about £1,500 to me, roughly, because I have a 1 in 3 conversion rate on people who book a call with me into actually joining the coaching program. And I know then also how much I charge for that. So the sales side of things and marketing is actually quite high value in terms of like revenue generating activities. So she's really good at it. Book in the time to do those calls when either her partner, husband or wife is at home, to look after the baby, or if the baby does consistently nap each time, we'll start to book some of that work when the baby's napping. And also as childcare, I mean, it's not unusual these days for sort of young children who are sort of round about 1 year old to then go into nursery sort of a day or two a week. So gradually you can start to claw back time. But I'll be honest, part of the process as a busy working parent is actually kind of letting go of the fact that your time's going to get eaten up. You don't have all of those resources available to you that you had maybe in your 20s, or pre-children. I think it was Daniel Priestley who I recently said that like playing field is completely different for like if you're a parentpreneur compared to like you can't compare yourself to people in their 20s who have no responsibilities and can travel the world and build their online business and work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The playing field is just very different for parents, and I think you kind of have to just accept and acknowledge that and then kind of let go of trying to like force your way through it.
Let's talk about common mistake. I know you've worked with several, but you kind of touched on some things here, but what are like some common mistakes that you see that people that are, first time building the business that they make?
Yeah, the most common one I see is comparisonitis. So I'm very pro like looking at your competitors and like seeing what they're up to, because you can learn something from that. But the mistake is assuming that they actually know what they're doing. So if you take something like pricing, for example, you could be in a town where there's 20 website designers and you want to set up a web design business, right? They will all be charging probably broadly the same amount of money, give or take. There'll be some kind of bandwidth from, probably $40 an hour up to $200 an hour, but broadly they have a similar sort of charging structure. And the thing is, if you want to be average, you'll charge an average amount if you want an average business, right? So, but we don't know that when you look at your competitors, they might all be charging similar amounts looking at each other, but how do we know that they're actually making any money or profit from that, right? So that's kind of the first thing is do look at your competitors, but don't assume their business is A, profitable, or B, that they actually know what they're doing. You have to set your prices at a rate that economically stacks up for your business. So a good example of this is, I speak to a lot of sort of freelancers and consultants, and if they want to grow a 100K business and they're thinking like maybe they want to charge $1,000 per website, like, okay, cool. So you can deliver 100 websites a year. And they're like, wow, no, I couldn't possibly deliver that many websites. I'm like, well, okay, how many could you do? And they're like, well, maybe 15 or 20. I was like, well, you've got to 5x your prices. oh, but all my competitors are charging $1,000, per website. Well, from what you've just said, you can't fulfill that. You've capped your maximum earnings potential by charging the same as everybody else. And there's other clues as well. So if you take, for example, like the most expensive web designer in the area, there's some clues. They've probably been around for the longest, so they're the most established. They probably have got the most reviews on Google and Trustpilot and places like that. But they are the most expensive. And here's the kicker: they're still able to enroll clients despite the fact that they're the most expensive. Kind of figuring out how much you need to charge based on your own sort of business objectives, goals, financially, is massively important. But knowing that there are clients out there willing to spend the most with the best sort of supplier is quite important. The second mistake is discounting to attract clients. Now, most small businesses, remember we talked about the second lever, the demand lever. Most business owners really struggle to stimulate demand. There's this thing called latent demand, which exists in like big brands and big shops. So if you go to Target or the supermarket or something like that, you've got all these people walking down the aisles to get their bread and milk. And then they'll say, oh, there's a 2-for-1 deal on beans. We'll go and get some beans. So that's that latent demand, and they're in the shop for their staple products. But then they can put a discount out there to attract them, people, because they've already got those customers. But small business owners, they don't have those shoppers walking by. They don't have the latent demand. So no amount of like discounting is actually going to attract sales in. We can't, as small business owners, we can't compare ourselves to the big brands out there, with millions of customers like coming into the shops every day. The challenge with discounting as well is that even like as little as a 5% discount, you've got to sell as much as 14% more of the same product or service to make the same net profit. By the time you get to a 20 to 25% discount, you've got to sell double of the same thing to make the same net profit. So again, you can see it doesn't make sense to work twice as hard for like the same money. You wouldn't do that. So the dream business there is actually to have, if we can, double the income with half the clients. So we've got to be really bold with our pricing, but really also really clear about how we're going to stimulate demand for the types of businesses that we want to work with. Kind of leads me on to the third mistake, which is then people are just too vague with the type of clients they work with. So especially in the B2B space, business to business space, like, my dream client is SMEs. Well, here in the UK, there's 6 million registered businesses, and only 30,000 of them are classified as large businesses. Small medium enterprises is not a niche. That's like all of the businesses, right? So we've got to get super specific on the type of client we work with. I think a lot of people are afraid of niche, something like niching, because they think that, if we niche, we're cutting out a large proportion of potential buyers. Well, we might niche, but the rule isn't just because we've niched, we can't serve other people, right? So take me, for example. I primarily work with sort of one-person businesses, coaches, consultants, and freelancers. That's my bread and butter, and most of the people in the group. And that's what, if you look at my website and my branding, my video, that's what everything is kind of targeted at. If I get quite often approached by accountants or dog grooming businesses or medical estheticians or all these different random and wonderful businesses, and they're like, oh, I see you're doing this great stuff for coaches. Do you think that would work for my business? And I take it on the balance of probability. Do you think that, can I help them or can I not help them? Loosely speaking, they're still all service client businesses. So you can niche, but you can also still serve outside your niche, but it helps when you're marketing to be able to attract the right sorts of clients in.
Right. Yeah. The niching thing always used to get me too, because I would always say what's too niche, right? Yeah, of course. One of my coaches said you don't want to boil the ocean, right? He talked about the aspect, but then I got into it like where it's like, okay, I get so analytical on the customer research. It's like, oh, when do I go and make that first dollar? I'm making all these calls, doing all this, trying to get all this customer information, and I would get stuck in the customer analysis stage, trying to understand the customer and trying to get into that one. This is helpful. A few more questions. Motivation when building business. I know you built your business, sold your business in 2016, the Coconut Group. The motivation, like when you build a business, the motivation kind of ebbs and flows a little bit with anything in life, right? So I guess this is why you go back to passion, this is why you go back to your why of having that it motivated. What you see, those are the reasons why you're so big on passion and having a why, so that keeps you motivated when times get tough, because they will.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, so again, like businesses actually, it doesn't feel like it, but businesses are incredibly predictable. Okay. And I've only learned this. I mean, I've been in business now for 20 years, and I've learned this the hard way, and I've got the t-shirt, and it means I'm able to kind of share what I'm about to share. because there's four basic simple stages that a business life like a life cycle that businesses go through on repeat, and they'll do it multiple times over the lifespan of the business. So the first stage is like consolidation. So you reach a certain point in your business where things become very stable, the cash flow is stable, your team are behaving and not giving you too much trouble, your clients are being kind and not complaining too much, you've got good profitability in the business, not too much of your time's being taken up. So and everything's kind of like tickety boo, it's all like really good and like plain sailing. You then, if that happens for too long, you reach the second point in the life cycle, which is where your confidence actually starts to, nothing's happened, nothing's gone worse, or like got, there aren't too many problems happening, but you just start to question why things aren't growing. So you've gone through this nice phase of consolidation where, or maybe even things have kind of grown ever so slightly. But yet to this point of like where things, you start to question like everything that's going on. Why am I not growing? What problems do then start to creep in? You do start to have the odd issue with a customer, or the odd issue with a member of staff, or something like that. Maybe a bit of imposter syndrome creeps in, because whilst your business is good, you see others doing really well. So you start to go, oh, compare yourself to others, and you're like, I should be up there. Why is my business not grown as much as that? Maybe, I don't know, during that time, there's been some economic uncertainty. So like COVID created a massive amount, and the financial crisis in 2008, the economic boom and bust when with the dot-com bubble, way back when. So we go through these economic cycles, and that can be quite sort of destabilizing for business owners. Worry and concern starts to creep in, but kind of things are okay. Then we hit stage 3, which is where like catastrophes happen. The business dips. Profitability gets eroded. Maybe even we lose some money. We lose a member of staff because they're too difficult. Maybe some clients leave because something better has come along and they've gone to one of our competitors. Because we're not really innovating, like we struggle to see the wood for the trees, and we think that it's all about us, but actually we haven't recognized there's all these external circumstances that are impacting on the business. What people don't realize is that no matter how uncomfortable those dips are, we actually kind of need them, because some of the greatest innovations have come out of economic downturns. And you think about things like, you only have to look at Elon Musk. A lot of the innovations that Elon Musk has been aligned with, such as like PayPal, for example, when he then sold PayPal and started to look at setting up Tesla, SpaceX, the Boring Company, they've actually aligned with periods just after economic downturns. What economic downturns tend to do for our business is force us to make changes. It forces us to innovate, do our business differently, find different clients, move into different markets, maybe tweak or change or improve our products ever so slightly. So then what happens is when our backs are against the wall, all of a sudden we have these magical breakthroughs. So we go consolidation, we get to the point of like worry and concern and stress, hit the fear zone, the dip, and then we bounce back out, but our business is better off than where it was in the previous consolidation zone. And the thing is, the consolidation phase is about 2 years. The dip happens very quickly, like 1 to 3 months. The breakthrough is typically about 6 to 9 months, and then you're back into consolidation. So this cycle goes on repeat every 2 to 3 years in every business. So in my agency, we went through it 3 times. I've been through the same cycle in my coaching business twice now. So I'm like, I've got the stripes and the medals, and the t-shirt for like going through that process. But the first time you go through it, first time you hit that fear zone and the dip, like it's scary as anything, because if you're not used to it. But the thing is, what I would say though, for business owners that are starting out, don't be scared of it, because you know that if you hit it, you're going to have some great stuff happen if you can get through it. The goal is to get through the dip and breakthrough as quickly as you possibly can and painlessly as you possibly can. I hope it gives some business owners, and most business owners know where they are on one of those 4 steps as well, that when they get the story, knowing that you're potentially facing a dip actually makes it that little bit easier, because you go, right, well, Robin said that it's predictable, so let's just crack on with it and get through it as quick as we can.
That's the perfect wording to put on the thumbnail. Every business is predictable, right? I think I can end with that. Well, Robin, I appreciate your time. This has been amazing. I hope my audience has a lot of value from this. Hope got something 0 to 1. Anything else you want to leave for the people? Any parting words?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier on in the conversation, I think a lot of people will have amazing ideas for businesses, and they will be worried about taking their first step in that business. But there's only 2 things that can ever sort of go wrong in business. Back in the day, if you were trying to go and get water every day on the plains of Africa, you know, walking 10 miles down to the river, you could get eaten by lions and tigers. There's like genuine things to fear out there in the world. But in business, two things: you can either lose a bit of money or you can look a bit stupid. And actually, neither of those are that bad. Nobody really cares about whether you look stupid or lose a bit of money. So you can get through it. And actually, a majority of businesses end up being incredibly successful. So my advice is always, if you want to start a business, don't set too lofty ambitions, because otherwise it will stop you from ever starting. Just get out there and do it. Just JFDI, just start selling whatever it is that you want to sell, get your first customer over the line, deliver it, and then see how you feel about it.